On November 15, 1942, I said yes to my fiancé, proudly dressed in his U.S. Army uniform. Just 8 short months later, he was called to the front lines of World War II in an unknown location in the Pacific for an indefinite amount of time. When my young husband left, we promised to write to each other every day for as long as we were apart. We decided to number the letters we sent to each other so we would know if any had been lost. Since we wrote to each other every day, we often had little else to say besides "I love you." But in every letter, that word was always written. The war took my husband, a dentist in the army, to the front lines. But whether he was in the midst of a battle in Aleutians, Okinawa, or the Philippines, he always found time to write to me every day. At times, he even found time to make me gifts or trinkets with materials he found during moments of rest. During one of these calm moments in the Philippines, he carved a beautiful mahogany knife to open letters with my name, Louise, engraved on one side and Philippines 1944 on the other. He said it was to help me open the letters he wrote to me every day. More than 50 years later, the little knife still sits on my desk and is used every day to open mail, though none of the letters I receive nowadays are as important as those I received from him during the war. There were days and weeks when I didn't receive any mail. And, of course, I worried about my husband's safety. Many of his comrades had already been killed. Inevitably, however, there would be a day when I would receive a bunch of letters all at once. I would then put them in order so I could read them chronologically and savor each one. Unfortunately, all the letters were opened and censored by the army, and I had to try to imagine what was written underneath the black lines. In one letter, when my husband was in Hawaii, he asked me to send him my measurements so he could have a Chinese tailor on the island make me pajamas. So, I responded by sending him my measurements 89-60-91, the good old days. My husband received the letter, but the measurements were crossed out by the censors who thought I was trying to communicate with him through a secret code. Anyway, the pajamas fit me perfectly. In November 1945, with the war ending, my husband finally returned home. We hadn't seen each other since he had left over 2 years and 4 months earlier. During that entire time, we had only spoken to each other once on the phone. But because we had faithfully kept our promise to write to each other every day, we had each written 858 letters to the other, for a total of 1716, that had helped us get through the war. When my husband returned, we were lucky enough to find a tiny apartment in the tough San Francisco housing market. In that box-like apartment, there was barely enough room for the two of us, and we were forced, much to our regret, to throw away the letters. After the war ended, we were fortunate never to be separated for more than 2 days, so we never had the chance to write letters to each other again. But over all these years, my husband has continued to show me, our children, and our grandchildren the devotion and love he showed me in those early days. We just celebrated our 53rd anniversary of a happy marriage, and although the letters from our early years of marriage no longer exist, the love contained in them will be forever.